Greetings Helldivers, my name is Grizz, and in this video I will be going over my super scuffly made sample guide for the Terminid faction. Although it does say Terminid edition, I will not be making a automaton version just because I only play bots for major orders and I'm not as familiar with the sample locations there as I am with the bugs. So I do invite someone in the community who plays on the bot front more to create an automaton version of this video. Now let's go over what I'll be covering. First, the different types of samples and where to find them. This is mainly for the newer players, so feel free to skip this section if you want. Next, I have general tips and a trick I have, which is not really related to samples, but I thought it's very, very useful and would be nice to include in this guide. And for the third section, which is the sample locations, I have secondary objectives, the nest, and the point of interest. Then I'll wrap it up with a conclusion. Timestamps are in the comments and description, so feel free to skip around. For the samples, we have common, rare, and super. Common samples can spawn at any difficulty and can spawn at secondary objectives, nests, point of interest, the extraction site, and primary objectives. I won't be covering these last two just because I feel like they're not as important as the other ones, but feel free to explore these on your own. And the common samples, they're either in a case, they're this bug slash spore mushroom looking thing, or they're a corpse worm, which is exclusive to the hero's grave point of interest. For the rare samples, we have difficulty 4 and above, same locations as the common samples, and they look like these two different types of metals or this yellow-orange flower. And finally, the super samples. These spawn at difficulty 6 and above, and they only spawn at this super sampled rock. General tips. Know the difference between a kite and diamond symbol for the points of interest. The kite symbol means that there are no samples left, and the diamond symbol means that there are samples still there, unless it is bugged. I'll be going over the different sample locations later for points of interest, so just once you get that information in your games, just know when it's bugged and when it's not bugged. Tip number 2, samples generally spawn in the same locations, so just remember where you looked last mission. If you found a sample there, check there again in the next mission. If you didn't find a sample there, check a different location within the same area. And eventually once you played enough missions, you've mentally mapped out where the samples are. And yeah. Tip number 3, try not to stay in missions too long. Less time in missions equals more time for more missions, which means more liberation or democracy, more samples. And also because patrols spawn a lot more once you complete the primary objective, so that just basically means if you're spending 5 to 10 minutes trying to get every single sample or trying to full clear, that's a lot more time for bugs to spawn, a lot harder for extracting with your samples. And for the last tip, while you have your map open or you're in a mech, nearby samples will not show their icon even if you're right next to them. So just try not to have your map open for too long if you're in a point of interest or area with samples. Yeah. For the map trick, I have this handy visual to help explain, but there are 2 parts. You pretty much only need this second part, but the first part is really helpful if you can do it. So before the mission, when you're selecting it and before you drop in, look at the areas that are labeled red and are labeled danger presence. These are basically areas that are either nests or secondary objectives, and you won't know which one is which. So try to remember the general area of these danger presence areas and check when you dive in. I have an example in the next slide. During the mission, if you didn't have a chance to look at the pre-mission map, there are shapes that you can refer to or remember for these hidden secondary objectives, and it can help you easily find them. I have the shapes shown in their respective sample location sections later, so do tune in for that. And yeah. Alright, I'm going to quickly showcase the map trick that I showcased a few seconds ago. And let's quickly try to generally remember where these danger presence areas are. So we got clumped around extraction. We got one right next to the terminal broadcast. And I guess just everywhere on the left side of the left half of the map. And I'm not actually going to play this mission, but just going to do this to showcase real quick. This is difficulty 9, so there will be 5 secondary objectives, and minus the illegal broadcast that's already given, we'll have to find 4 others. And how we'll do that, you'll see in a second. So there's 2 ways. We can either eliminate which nests, which ones are nests and which ones aren't, or we can just look at the shapes of the secondary objectives, which I'll showcase later in this video. But first we had clumped around extraction. That's a very clear Stalker Lair. We have one right next to the terminal, but that's a nest, so we don't care about that anymore. Then we had on the left side of the map. So let's just check on the left side of the map. We got a Stalker Lair, got a radar station, and we got a SEAF Artillery. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pretty easy stuff. You'll see the shapes as mentioned earlier in the later slides, which is right now. So I'll be going over the secondary objectives now. For the research, the escape pod, the broadcast, and the Spore Spewers, these are all hidden. Spore Spewer is usually a very small red area that might be that might look like a nest in the mission, but it's a Spore Spewer. So the shape's not included, but the other 4 are. Starting with the Shrieker Nest, no samples here, but it is hidden. And here are a handful of screenshots from different missions, including Shrieker Nest. And yeah, general pattern is circles representing the Shrieker mushrooms. And yeah, just the general circle representing the area where it's in. Next, Stalker Layers. And again, shapes and screenshots from several missions I've been in with Stalker Layers. General shape is like, I guess a C, backwards C, an open mouth, I guess. You got the walls, you got the open entrance. So for this layout of a Stalker Lair with the Stalker hole and the regular bug hole, samples have a chance to spawn there, and then up here. So this is another layout for the Stalker Lair. This one has 2 Stalker holes instead of 1. So do keep that in mind for if you have this layout in your mission. Luckily it seems like Stalkers have spawned, but samples for this one, just search in a U shape like that, and that's generally where you'll find the samples. For the 1 bug hole Stalker Lair, you just want to look in front of the Stalker Lair. They're just scattered all about, rare samples and common samples. Next, moving on, we have the radar station. Alright, for general shape, it's kind of what you'll see in game. For this one, let's look at this one for example. We got the tower, then the stairs, then the terminal. That's like the very default one. And then we have the one where it's just a long rectangle, just this one, where the radar tower is right here. Then we got the terminal. You get the point, but yeah, just look for the long rectangles, or you got this one, which is a bit different from the other ones, but yeah. Alright, for this layout of the radar station, you want to check over here next to these generators. You want to check over here next to the warehouse boxes. Then you want to check up here at this bench, as well as over here next to the warehouse boxes. For this version of the radar station, you want to look next to the building. You want to look on the barrel. Well, it's not here, it's destroyed, but the barrel, and then these boxes behind it. Okay, moving on to the SEAF Artillery. The shape, you got the cannon, then the ring surrounding it. You also have the 2-circle version, where over here there's usually auto missiles. Alright, for the SEAF Artillery, at least for this version, you just want to look inside this little bunker area, and then look around the outer ring of the cannon. There's also a sample spawn here, and just on the boxes, also a sample spawn right here. And I'm just gonna check over here because sometimes there's a sample spawn there. It's like there's no others, but yeah, just check around in a circle. For the 2-circle version, you want to check also around the circle, and then there's usually a boxes and a stair over here, so you just want to check on the boxes for the common samples. Moving on to the Spore Spewer. For the Spore Spewer, this one is easy. Just check around. If it's like this and it's grounded, if it's the one where it's half raised, then make sure to check under the terrain for samples as well. For the Spore Spewer, this one. Alright, for this version of the illegal broadcast tower, you want to look next to the buildings. So we got some here. Also want to make sure you're checking on the outskirts for rare samples. As you can see, this is a rare sample spawn. Then you want to check in the middle. Usually there's a rare sample spawn somewhere around here in the middle. Not here this time, but right here. Common sample spawn. Quickly check. Here we go. Rare sample. So for these, you just want to check the middle, the building that's next to the illegal broadcast, and then on the outskirts. Alright. The upload escape pod is pretty easy. Just look around the pod itself and you'll find rare and common samples. For the rogue research station, there is one version that I couldn't find in my missions, so I didn't get gameplay of it, but it is the dead charger surrounded by a fence. You just want to check inside that fence and the rock on the left side of it for rare and common samples. Then you just want to check around the research station itself for more common samples. But let's get into the other versions. Alright, for the rogue research station, at least this variant, for common samples, you want to check around the Spherical Domes. You can see one right there. And then there's also a rare sample spawn behind the research station itself. I'm gonna take this.
Objective critical stratagem available.
Go down here, get the rare sample. X2. And sometimes there's a common sample spawn on these boxes, but it's not any this time. For this version of the radar station with the spherical domes, but the research station itself is raised up rather than in the ground. You want to look around the spherical domes again for rare samples this time. And then you want to go over here where there's like two together and there's boxes. And over there is where you'll find your common samples. So let's go over here. And our common samples. Alright, for this version of the Rogue Research Station, you want to check around the plants over here.
Sample collected. Rare sample acquired.
Check over here on these boxes, as well as behind the research station itself.
Calling in a hell bomb. Dropping item.
Okay. Now that was all the secondary objectives. Let's go to the nest. We got light, medium, and heavy. Just a note, for the first and third videos of the light nest, there are 2 bug hole variants, but the sample locations are the same for each bug hole. So do keep that in mind for your missions. Let's get into it. Alright, so this nest is a 3 bug hole heavy nest. The rare samples are located at the corners of the bug hole. What the heck? So here, and then over there, and then common samples spawn in the middle.
Sample collected.
Alright, so the common samples, and then over here on the other corner, the rare sample.
Acquired.
So just at the 2 flags, where the 2 flags are, is where you'll find the rare samples. Alright, for the 10 bug hole heavy nest, you want to look at 2 places. One is this whole middle, you want to look in a line. And then on the outside, so on the outside you can see like these spikes. You want to look at these joint spikes that are a bit lower, not the big one, but the lower one. And that's where you'll find rare samples. So, slow this down. We'll get the rare samples here, and then we'll look in the middle for our common samples. Alright, let's go in the middle now. Right here, we got common samples. It's unlikely we'll get more, but we're gonna check anyways. And towards the end here, I'm looking over here because there are rare sample spawns up here. Because there were, I think, 2 or 3 at the spikes, there isn't going to be a spawn here. Yeah, nothing else. So that's what you do. Check the middle, check these lower conjoined spikes. Alright, moving on to the medium nest. Coming up on this 4 bug hole medium nest. So some things to point out here are this building, the bug mound, or the hill housing the bug hole over there, and the back of this bug wall, as I like to call it. Let me take this out really quick. So at the base of this bug mound, you got common samples that spawn there. Rare samples spawn here. And if there's no rare samples here, then it will be at the back of this bug wall. If there's no samples over there, most likely it's going to be up here. And then for other common sample spots, you're going to want to look at this building. So we have side of the building over here, next to this ammo pack. And then there is also another spawn right here on whatever that thing is.
Calling in orbital strike.
And then I'll just check the back of this bug wall real quick. It's unlikely that there will be any samples. Oh, there they are. Here we go.
Rare sample
Yep, so the
acquired.
back of the bug wall, at the mound, next to the building, and then on that circle thing. And the reason I said that it's unlikely it'll be at the back of the bug wall, it's because for normal missions that don't have water or mountains that limit the space of the map, generally for these 4 bug hole medium nests, there are only 2 to 3 rare samples. So when I saw 2 at the top of that bug mound, I subconsciously thought that there wouldn't be any at the back at the bug wall. It's the 5 bug hole medium nest. Just check on the left of that bug hole, left of this bug hole, and then over here in this area. That one was pretty quick, but just checking a triangle kind of. 1, 2, 3. Let's move on to the light nest. This is a 1 bug hole light nest. For this one, you just want to look within the pit and then around the bug hole.
Got a sample. Rare spotted.
For this bug hole, this 1 bug hole light nest, you want to check again around the bug hole itself, and then at the back here.
Rare sample acquired.
Marking location.
Alright, for the single bug hole light nest, you just want to check in the front as well as at the sides of the nest. As you can see, there's a common sample spawning at the side, and there should be one, I guess it's not here, but there's usually, oh, right here.
Rare
Yep.
sample acquired.
Sides and in the front.
Got a sample.
Alright, so I'm coming up on this nest right here. It looks to be the 3 bug hole light nest. This one's pretty simple. I just like to throw in my orbital strike, or if I'm running the 500 kg, that's what I put. So I didn't kill them all,
Prepare to
but
exterminate.
pretty simple to take out. For common samples, you just want to look within the pit. And then for rare samples, you just go around here, and behind this little bug wall, rare samples spawn here. So don't forget to check behind the wall.
Requesting
This
sentry.
is a 3 bug hole light nest. You want to look to the left of this building, where it would be for a rare sample, between the building and this rock for common samples. And then you want to look around the bug holes that you destroyed for common and rare samples. That was all for the nest. Now let's get into the points of interest. I have a pretty large amount over here. I think it's 14, all with different names. There are other points of interest and variations not covered in this video. You might see them on new planets, other planets, but these are pretty much the most consistent and the ones I see the most often on every planet. And as a reminder, the diamond means that samples are still there unless it's bugged, and the kite symbol means that there are no samples at that point of interest. Alright, for the bunker friendship door, just want to check down here in the ditch next to this forklift, and the common samples will spawn there. Alright, this point of interest is the crash landing strip, as I like to call it. A crash ship. Over here, to the right of the ship, is where rare samples spawn. There is a chance that this is replaced by a escape pod with the same loot table as the lockers, and then within the strip itself is where common samples spawn. Table as the lockers. So I said right of the ship because if you look from the front, or I guess from the back, the right is the right, and that's where the pit is with the rare samples. Alright, so coming up on this area, I like to call it sample farm. Rare samples have a chance to spawn up there within that fence area. Rare samples have a chance to spawn here, and common samples have a chance to spawn under this windmill. This is the hero's grave, as I like to call it. Just look inside the grave itself, and there's up to 3 common sample spawns. This is the house with the escape pod next to it. For samples, you just want to look in front of the house, and there are 2 common sample spawns.
Sample collected.
Alright, so this one, pretty simple point of interest. At the bottom here, there's a locker that you can open by using an explosive grenade or any explosive weapons. And then there are 2 common sample spawns, which are both here on the side of this building and then in the front. Here we have the one research station with the abandoned mineshaft behind it, or collapsed mineshaft I should say. This one is pretty simple. Within the mining area over here, a common sample chance to spawn here, right next to this ammo pack. There are a chance for 2 common samples to spawn on these boxes, and then rare samples over here, if not replaced by the locker. Alright, for the oil pit, you just want to look around where all the oil is, in the middle between the 2 oil pits, and just look around until the diamond turns into a kite. Alright, for the point of interest with a bunch of supplies in the ditch and the locker, you have the common sample spawning here, and then a locker. This is the supply hole as I like to call it. There are rare samples that spawn over here, sometimes it's replaced by a locker. Common samples can spawn here and here, and then also up here on this ledge. Alright, so coming up on this point of interest, we have the place with these 2 spherical buildings. So right next to the right one, there's this little terrain here. This usually has common samples, and then common samples also have a chance to spawn here, as well as rare samples next to the supplies. And then if there's no water here, there's either rare samples in the ditch or there's a locker. And if there's no rare samples here or here, then right behind this building is where the rare samples will spawn. This is the ruins with escape pod. There are 2 common samples in the front here. There's usually a fence, but it's broken. And then over there, next to the boxes, we have another common sample. This is the point of interest with an escape pod on this side. It has stims and grenades on over there, no samples. On the other side, we have 2 common sample spawns with ammo and stims. Alright, so this point of interest is a bit new, but it has 2 buildings here. And the samples are inside this little area. But if you look within and you still have the diamond symbol, you actually go to the right. And to the right over here, there's a pit a bit far away, but it spawns a rare sample. So make sure to check this pit if you ever see this point of interest. And that was it for both point of interest and nests and, well, all three. And secondary objectives. Yeah. If you need to go back, feel free to use the timestamps. Alternatively, I have the Google presentation link in the description and comments below. If you have any questions for me, feel free to ask and I'll do my best to answer. I guess the final tip, I'll go back to the one up here. Not this one, up here. Especially for locations I didn't cover in this video, like the extraction sites and the primary objectives. Just make sure to check in one location. If you find a sample, check again. Keep checking while you keep playing missions, and eventually you'll mentally map out a where all the samples are. And that's pretty much how I started remembering all these sample locations. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you get a lot of samples. Thank you.